Well, the one thing that I wanted to highlight, because I think is very, very critical to look at, and that is the disparity in wealth ownership between so-called African Americans and white people. The disparity in wealth ownership. We have to understand something, and Neely Fuller does an excellent job of discussing this, even though he's not a psychologist by training, from my understanding, but he does a good job of talking about psycholinguistics and how the words that are used shape your interpretation of your reality. The white man is master in coming up with words and then using those words to impact the way black people perceive our reality. For example, one such concept is middle class, the black middle class. There is no such thing as a black middle class. Class is a Marxist concept, a Leninist Marxist concept that relates to ownership of the means of production. In order to be middle class, you must have access to and control over corporations and institutions. Class is about wealth. What do you own in terms of resources, land, businesses, stocks, material wealth? That's what class is about. Black people don't own a damn thing. We don't have class. We simply have black people who make a little bit more money than other black people. But that does not put them in a different class. When you look at poor white people and you look at the white middle class, what makes the white middle class separate from poor whites? It's because they own things and they are able to live off of residual income. The average white middle class person has investments that allow them to get paid even while they're not working. That's what makes them middle class. They own wealth. If you look at the average white person's assets, in fact, the current census that was done said the average wealth of a black middle class home, middle class, is about $5,000. No wealth, but cash in the bank, $5,000. The average wealth of a white middle class home is more than $100,000. You're looking at a $95,000 just minimum. Worse than that.
Brother Umar.
Yes, sir.
I just want to be clear about what you just said. Did they say that $5,000 a week?
No, $5,000 in total assets for that home.
5,000.
In other words, if you add up, if you add up what the family is worth, add up their net worth. That's land, property, investments, stocks. Add it up. And the average black home is at $5,000 U.S.
And that would
almost enough.
Middle class?
And that can qualify. Well, the $5,000 doesn't qualify you for middle class, but that's how much wealth the average black middle class person has.
Average black. Okay. All right. I'm clear now. Okay.
So in other words, the average black middle class person is making more money. Excuse me. They're making more money than the poor black, but they don't have more saved up than the poor black. Because as you know, the more we make, the more we spend. So, for example, if I'm a working class black, I might have a $20,000 car note. But the minute I get an $80,000 job, I want me a Benz. So I went from a $20,000 car to a $80,000 or $90,000 car. Now, I only make $80,000. But because I'm middle class, I feel like I have to look the part. So we end up spending even more money on excess materialism. So when you look at how much money the poor black person has saved and how much money the middle class person has saved, it's about the same amount of money. In fact, there was a study that said that the average black middle class, we ain't talking poor, we talking so-called middle class blacks, is 2 paychecks away from poverty. The average middle class black family, because of their house and their car and all the expensive stuff that they have, all the credit cards, if they got fired, they could survive a month. On the flip side, the average middle-class white family, because that's true class, they have wealth. The average middle-class white family could live at least a year if they were laid off of work. At least a year before they would have to start being concerned about how they're going to keep a roof over their head. 12 months. Black person, 1 month. There's no such thing as a black middle class. And let me say this. Look at how they define class. In America, class is defined only by two things. How much money you make isn't one. I want to be clear about this. I want to make sure the listeners are clear. How much money you make has nothing to do with your class category. I want to be clear about that. The only two things they look at is how much education you have and your occupation. Where do you work? Let me repeat this. How much education you have and where do you work? So let me give you an example. You have a doctorate degree in education. A doctorate degree in education. But in your school district where you work at, all the white people control all the upper echelon jobs, the middle management jobs, the principal jobs, the administrative jobs. They're all controlled by white folks and a couple token Negroes. So the fact that you have a doctorate degree did not earn you more money because there's no positions in your school district to which you can graduate to. So you have a doctorate. You're still a school teacher. You're raising 3 or 4 children, possibly by yourself, which is a situation many of our sisters are in who are educators. So you're raising 2 or 3 children by yourself. You're a school teacher. You have a doctorate degree. Because you have a doctorate and because you're a school teacher, you're going to be considered probably upper class with your doctorate. Your doctorate degree makes you upper class, or at least upper middle class, on paper. But in reality, the situation is what? Because you're only making about $40,000 in your job, and that's gross, not net. Your take-home pay is less than $20,000 a year, and you're raising 3 or 4 kids, despite having a doctorate, despite being a teacher, your take-home pay is equivalent or less than a black person who's considered to be poor. An impoverished black person has the same take-home pay as many so-called upper-middle-class black people. It is the illusion of progress. The same amount of money they have to spend is no different than a poor black person. They're identical in terms of actual net pay that comes home. But because they have a doctorate and because they're a school teacher or a physician or an engineer or a counselor or a school nurse, okay, they're automatically considered middle class when the truth of the matter is they're just as broke as the people in the ghetto.
Lord have mercy. Collect your Gucci bag is going down. That's interesting. My eyes are wide open right now.
Now,
okay.
We saw the spending report for black people, and I think this was the 2011 spending report. 2012 might not be out yet. For 2011, they said black people spend more time on the internet, more money on the cell phone, more money on cell phone minutes, more money on internet minutes. So we are clearly dominating in the what do we call that, World Wide Web market. Now, The interesting thing that the report pointed out is black people are different in one major way than every other consumer in America. 2 ways, two. 2 ways. The first way is we are conspicuous in our consumption. We buy stuff not because we need it, but because it is available. This was one of the biggest findings of the study. Black people will buy it just because it's new. In other words, you have an iPhone 4. Nothing's wrong with your iPhone 4. But a commercial just came out and said there's an iPhone 5. So you're going to go out and spend $400 on an iPhone 5. That's only slightly different than the iPhone 4. And why are you buying it? Because you need it? No. You're buying it because it is available. The study said black people are unlike everyone else. Most Americans buy things when they need it. They said black people buy it just because it's available. This is what white folks are saying. Put it out there and the niggas are going to buy it. And then they said that black people, more than any other people, what they own seems to reflect. What they own seems to reflect their own estimation of their self-worth. Look at that. What they buy. For most people, what they buy does not reflect their self-worth. But for black people, what they buy reflects their self-worth. That's taking us back to post-traumatic slavery disorder. That's taking us back to low racial self-esteem. It's saying the The reason why we got 1 million pocketbooks, 1 million cars, 1 million pairs of sneakers, shoes, clothes, jeans, whatever we into, the reason why we have it is because on a subconscious level, we feel worthless. And so we buy all the material garbage as a vicarious way of adding value to ourselves. In other words, look at what I'm driving. Look at what I'm wearing. We use that to add worth to us. You see it in the schools with our children. Our children do never debate over what they know. They never debate over who they are. They only debate over what they own. Public school is nothing but a what? Fashion show where black children go and compete with other black children for how much they are worth based on what they are wearing and based on what they own. This is what we have created. A whole generation of baby niggers who don't know how to do anything but buy what white people make and then use it to look better than the next black person. Think about it. Whenever black people whenever we are congregated, what do we do when we're congregated? In the average black event, they stare each other up and down. The fellas look at each other to see how well they dress. The ladies look at each other to see how well they dress. And this is grown black people. The children have it even worse.